There's a good chance the Chargers could look at a wide receiver in round one of the 2023 NFL Draft, and Zay Flowers could be the explosive piece they've been missing.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. We've been covering the Chargers now for 7 seasons together, but this is our fifth season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen today. And to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. And today we are getting into another version of our Mock Draft Monday, comparing a couple of the top receiving options the Chargers could target in the draft with the electric Zay Flowers and Quentin Johnston, both guys who have been linked to the Chargers and both guys that would definitely bring a certain level of explosiveness, but hard not to fall for Zay Flowers. The dude is absolutely electric. And we'll also talk about another guy to compare to the other tight ends we've covered so far. And we're getting into Darnell Washington, the gigantic tight end from Georgia, a true gargantuan. I mean, that dude is a special size. You don't make athletes that big very often. That move, like he's able to do, but another collection of different offensive ways the Chargers could go in the first round of the 2023 NFL draft. And let's start with Zay Flowers, David. And I like the way we've been doing this, being able to kind of break these guys down a little bit more, options for the Chargers, and focusing on Justin Herbert as always. Zay Flowers is exciting, man. I mean, when you're talking about why this guy would be linked to the Chargers, it makes a ton of sense. You're in desperate need of a yak threat. You're a desperate need for more weapons for Justin Herbert and just more explosiveness. Like, this is a dude that brings all that to the table.
You want that speed monster. You want that just perfect complement to Justin Herbert's arm. You want somebody who has the ability to get the ball in their hands quickly and watch them create and do some magic. And Zay Flowers absolutely has the ability to do that.
And we have the combine coming up here this week, and we should be able to get some, media availability from Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley, hopefully. But it'll be interesting to see the numbers, that this guy puts up if he decides to run the 40 and stuff. Because, I mean, the start and stop ability is obviously insane with this dude. It'll be interesting to see what his long speed was. He was able to attack the third level, right, but doesn't have a big, catch radius or anything like that we'll talk about. The biggest knock is obviously going to be the size, which we'll get to. 5'10", 172 pounds. But as far as the pros go, I mean, David, the Chargers need somebody to create, right? This guy is a creator. He's not a guy that needs a runway to make people miss. Like, it's a guy that I saw make, 7, 8 people miss in the same play. Like, that's the kind of dynamic that this guy is. He's a special type. And if you're going to be that size and if you're going to be drafted in the first round, like, you need to be special in that way. But like, the vision he has in the open field, the way he's able to cut, to stop on a dime, like how many plays, just him running full speed towards the sideline, he just stops and guys just run right past him. It's so hard to get a good hit on this dude. Like, he brings all of that to the table.
Yes, he does. That stop and start ability is absolutely next level with him. He caught a pass over the middle against Rutgers where he put his foot in the ground, reversed course, and then gained an extra 20 yards like it was absolutely nothing. He does that time after time after time. He has that crazy separation ability. He also has alignment versatility too. He's not just a slot receiver. You see him outside. You also see him in the backfield as well. They really did a bunch of different things to try to get him open and get him, the ability to do what he does best. Also, I really enjoyed the body control too. That's one of the things that is really a feather in his cap, is his ability to contort his body and really go after the football no matter where it was. And that's really, really nice. It really gives your quarterback a lot more options, a lot more opportunities to get you the football, knowing that you're going to do absolutely everything in your power to put yourself in a position to make that catch.
Yeah, I mean, he played bigger than he was. And we'll talk about Quentin Johnston, who I think plays kind of smaller than his size, right? When you're talking about just looking at a guy and wondering, what he's going to look like when the ball's in the air. This is a dude who attacks the ball in the air, not a big catch radius, right? So it's not a ton of, just snatching the ball over people. But as far as him making tough catches, I saw him make some pretty ridiculous catches, especially for a guy with shorter arms. I think the other way you can kind of see him making an impact too, did return some punts this year. That is something like all the DeAndre Carter plays that we saw last year with the Chargers. If they were going to this dude, he would have been much more productive with it.
Oh,
You'd have
yeah.
to think, at least as far as they, and like obviously we're projecting this is a rookie,
Sure.
coming into the league, but that never fit what DeAndre Carter's game was. That's what Zay Flowers is a guy that you can just hand the ball off to. I mean, the amount of times you saw him catching the ball, before the first down marker and just being able to find a way to create enough space to make enough people miss to go get that first down. The Chargers just don't have that. And that's the other thing with this guy is just his fit with the Chargers. Like Keenan
Yes.
Allen doesn't bring this to the table. Mike Williams doesn't bring this to the table. It'll be interesting to see what that D speed is, but like no matter what, you're getting a guy that brings something to the table that complements what your other guys do well.
I mean, and you were talking about kind of the yak ability there. There's one specific play. He caught a swing pass against Louisville, and then he outran the entire defense to the other side of the field and scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
And those are just the plays that you don't see in the Chargers offense, and you haven't
No.
seen in a very, very long time. That's one of the things that this guy brings to the table, the ability to just absolutely make everybody miss and outrun the entire defense to get to the end zone. That type of speed is rare. It's not something you can teach. His ability to stop and start is fantastic. Obviously, with those abilities and with the slider frame, it does come with some detractors as well. I mean, if the first thing is he's very slight. He's 172 pounds, soaking wet. That is a concern at the next level for sure. And earlier on in his college career, he did have a propensity to kind of catch the ball with his body instead of going out and snatching it with his hands. Those are some things that you want to continue to work on going to the next level. And obviously, Daniel, he's never going to be confused for a good run blocker. That's not what his game is. That's not what you want to utilize him for at the next level.
Sure. And people might not think that's a big deal. And to some extent it is, right? Because one of the reasons, one of many reasons the Chargers running game wasn't good last year wasn't just because of the running backs, but just bad blocking out on the perimeter and guys
That's
just
right.
not being able to make an impact out there. And part of the reason is sometimes you had guys like DeAndre Carter and Michael Bandy and other tiny receivers out there trying to do it. I do wonder if he can play outside at the next level, right? Because in college, he did it. They were able to kind of offset him too and keep him behind the line of scrimmage for some more free releases, even on the outside, which I think helped a lot. But there's very, very few guys who are able to do that. Like right now, the only guy you're going to see producing at that kind of level, at the NFL level, is going to be someone like Tyreek Hill, right? Who obviously has game-changing speed. I think the stop and start, there's a little bit to both of those guys. Both of those guys, as shorter guys, really, really excel there.
Yeah.
And are able to accelerate super quickly. But you need like a him or a Steve Smith, right? Or a, Antonio Brown. Like there's not a long list of guys who can come to the NFL and produce at that size. 5'10",
Right.
172 is very, very small. I think it's
Devonta Smith's around that size.
Sure, he's a little taller though. He's
Yeah.
lanky, he's I would say he's probably quite a bit taller, but as far as just frame and slenderness, yeah, I mean he's pretty thin, but and that's still pretty early for Devonta Smith. But yeah, very impactful as a blocker. The other thing, 24 drops in his college career, an 11% drop rate. That's not something you want to see. I did think he started catching more with his hands. And there was some, a couple tough catches there where I wonder, hey, is that considered a drop, on the sideline? I don't know. Maybe a couple of questionable things there. But that's obviously super alarming. And I think those are the reasons you can't just jump all in and just be like, this guy, trade up for him, go get him no matter what. What you can say, though, is from what you've seen from him, and obviously, too, factoring in that every team that Boston College played knew exactly where they were going to go. Like this dude was their entire offense. Everyone knew it was coming. And it was still very, very hard to stop. And I mean, 3 seasons of 700 plus receiving yards at the collegiate level is not easy to do. You saw a consistency there and caught 50% of his contested catches, which is something that someone 5'10" is not supposed to be able to do according to the Draft Network. So that is, somewhere where he played well above his stature for sure and made some above the rim plays that you wouldn't think you would see from someone like that. Where I didn't see enough above the rim plays was from the guy we're going to talk about next, wide receiver Quentin Johnston from TCU. But the one thing he does bring is juice. Rumored to be a 4.3 guy, has the speed, had some yards after the catchability in a very different kind of way, I think. And I'm excited to talk about him because Daniel Jeremiah, someone who covers this team very closely, just mocked this guy to the Chargers in the first round. But I do need to tell you guys first that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and also of the Locked On Podcast Network. Very excited about the partnership with FanDuel. And right now, we are midway through the NBA season. It's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, easy to use. Then you can bet on anything from the money line, point scores, to threes drained. That's another great thing with FanDuel is you get a bunch of crazy props if you want that. And you just get a lot of different kinds of bets. You can go play your props like player points, rebounds, assists. Then you can also go wacky if you want to and go exclusive bets like the 2x3, which is 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes. There's a ton of great stuff you can do there and have fun while you're watching, probably your second favorite sport in the NBA. But FanDuel right now even lets you combine your bets for a same game parlay, something I've definitely done many times. A lot of fun. So don't miss out on your chance to get that no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's get to another exciting receiving option, David, for the Chargers. I mean, I think for Chargers fans, you just want some juice, right? No matter how you can get it, where you get it obviously is important. If you're going to spend a first round pick on someone, you want to make sure they're kind of the full package and can bring multiple things to the table. And this is a guy that I could see why, from the outside looking in, they would want someone like Quentin Johnston. First of all, big, fast, wide receiver. The Chargers love big wide receivers, obviously. Daniel Jeremiah just selected him in the first round of his last mock draft. And I think he is much different than Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, a different kind of skill set from those guys. So from that aspect, I can see it.
Yeah, definitely a different skill set. Obviously, you see the size at 6'4" and about 220 pounds, and you're like, oh, that's pretty similar to Mike Williams. That's where the similarities end. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
These are not the same players, because Quentin Johnston is much faster than Mike Williams.
Yeah.
It's very, very obvious when you flip on the tape. And that's the reason why the Chargers and Quentin Johnston would be linked together, because he brings that world-class speed to the table.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is watch, the Georgia game, which if you didn't watch that national championship game, you saved yourself from a really, really bad game. But basically the only bright spot in that game for TCU, right, it was Quentin Johnston breaking a tackle and just taking it to the house, right? Misdirection play, get him the ball, and he just took it. And that's where he does well as far as yards after the catch go. If he's breaking tackles, usually it's because he has a runway, right? If he can get a runway, if you're running a crossing route, right, if you can get him on a post or something where he's able to run away from the defender and use that speed and get to his top speed, he can be really effective. And he's still really big, right? So there's parts of his big frame that you wish you could see more from him. But the one place I think you see it really show up is if this dude's running full speed, you're not going to be able to bring him down with an arm tackle, right? And I think the other thing he brings to the table too, probably more versatility, right? You can play him as a big slot if you wanted to and send him in there. You can play him outside. You can definitely do that. And, an underrated 8.7 yards after the catch per reception, according to Mike Florio. So, I mean, one of the guys who, in a different way, he brings that yak ability. It's just, it's so hard to compare that to what you see from someone like Zay Flowers, who can start and stop and do it that way.
Yeah, according to PFF, Johnston forced 45 missed tackles across 3 seasons at TCU. So
it's really good.
You talking about him being tough to bring down. I mean, the numbers surely back that up.
Here's a stat: Chargers wide receivers broke 5 tackles last year. I didn't look that up, but it sounds right to me.
It's probably very accurate, honestly, considering what we watched. With Mike Williams always kind of trying to get separation, but not doing that.
He probably had the best. And DeAndre Carter didn't make a lot of guys miss. Keenan Allen, I don't remember the last time he's made someone miss. I love him. I don't remember the last time he's forced a missed tackle. Just not those guys' game, right? At this point.
Yeah, I like Quentin Johnston's get off. I really like his ability to really get started. He's really quick off the line. Yeah, his first step is fantastic. I think he has a really special ability to track the ball when they're throwing it deep to him. He really is very comfortable with that. Seems like he doesn't have any problems putting himself in the right position. And when the quarterback hits him in stride, it's over. He's gone. He's in the end zone. It's a touchdown. And also, I really feel like this is a guy who really truly excels on the drag routes going across the field. Yeah. If you give him a runway and you hit him in stride on a drag route, bye-bye. He's out of there. He's gone. It's unbelievable to watch. I mean, I think that's why, Daniel and I were talking before we started recording. Some of those things right there kind of reminded me of Tyrell Williams and his ability to really separate with those long strides. I mean, Quentin Johnston's probably a little bit quicker, a little bit faster
More
than
explosive.
Tyrell.
Yeah.
Yeah, more explosive, but those kind of examples right there were special to watch, and you can easily see that translate to the Chargers offense because there's not really any guys there that you can hit them in stride and expect to see them go the distance.
Yeah, and I don't think he's as good of a fit as someone like Zay Flowers, and you've wanted
Right.
someone like that for a long time, right? We both have,
Yes.
just as someone who can just create on their own, right? That's
Please.
a special ability.
Yeah.
But it's still something they need, right? Like,
Oh,
this is
yeah.
why I would understand it, because just yeah, I mean, as far as Tyrell Williams goes, I mean, neither of those guys are going to be contested catch guys. At the
Nope.
same time, though, I think he is Johnston, that is a better route runner by quite a bit, at
Yeah.
least coming out, right? A much
Oh, yeah.
more, and like, I think a good route runner for his size, and not
He
a
really
super,
snaps off his routes. I really
yeah.
enjoyed that.
And that's not easy to do at 6'4", close
No.
to 220. That's just not easy to do, and something even Mike Williams struggles with, right? As
Right.
far as like being able to get separation, especially on in breaking routes, he seems to be able to get separation. And if he can get away from you, he is someone that can run away from you. He does get a little bit caught up at the line of scrimmage at times, though.
Yes.
Something especially for his size. I mean, he's a bigger target for people to get at. And there are some frustrating parts of his game. Another guy with drops. For God's sakes, use your hands.
Yes.
You have such
please.
long arms. Just put your hands. I mean, both these guys, it was so frustrating watching dudes, catch the ball with their body. And it led to drops for
Yeah.
both of them. Both these guys, two of the higher drop rates in the class. And to see a body catcher, someone with that frame, not just snatching and plucking the ball out of the air, was frustrating.
Yes, it was. It was frustrating because you can see the catch radius and you know what that catch radius is able to do for you. You watch Mike Williams play receiver for the Chargers and you see that Justin Herbert throws it to anywhere in his immediate area and you feel pretty good about Mike Williams' opportunity to go get that football. Unfortunately, with Quentin Johnston, that's not exactly the case. It just didn't feel like he was a guy that if you put him in that situation where he has to go out and grab it, you don't feel that confident that he's going to get it. He's really struggled getting off the line of scrimmage. If defenders are in press man and they get their hands on him, he definitely has trouble getting separation. He is a guy that works better in against a cushion, so he can really get that get off and really allow that acceleration, that speed to take over. The drops, the contested catches, and the struggling to get off the line. I mean, I think those are the things that are some opportunities in his game to get better at the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, better blocker than Zay Flowers, but I thought left some to be desired there.
You better be.
That's true.
With
At
50
that size,
pounds
you better
on him,
be.
right?
But like, probably not as good as someone I would want that size to be blocking.
Right. Yes.
Not a lack of effort thing or anything like that, but just a little bit too many whiffs.
Yeah.
And I'd say the only other downside is just he's not a creator. It seemed like a lot of times I've seen some people praise his short area quickness. And I just don't see it much because it seemed like they were very willing to throw him wide receiver screens with blockers in front of him. It just didn't
and he didn't
seem
do
like
much
that
with
was
it.
his strength. Not a lot of, because that's you're catching the ball static, right? You're not getting a running start, and I just don't think that's the best way to use him. You need to get him a running start.
Yeah.
And the Chargers, need guys who, they don't even have that guy who can get a running start and take it to the house, right? So it's not like they have that already. And I think the big thing with someone like this is like, you don't want to overthink it, right? Like guys like AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, huge freakish dudes. I'm not comparing them at all. They're different kind of receivers, but like in a lot of ways, a lot of people overthought those picks, right? And those guys end up going in the second round. And now, obviously, looking back at it, you're like, how did those dudes go in the second round, right? Like, look at them, first of all, but like
DK's a freak.
Yeah, both those dudes are, right? I mean, both those guys are, top 20 receivers in the league. And, in AJ Brown's case, even higher than that last year. He was one of the best, if not,
he was awesome.
Top 5 or 3 last year.
Mm-hmm.
So is it overthinking it, right? Is it nitpicking too much? Obviously, different skill sets, but like if you just look at it, right, and you just look at this dude's a freak. I mean, he has all those traits. He has, some special traits in that regard, especially at that size. Out of the two of them, though, I think we'd both lean Zay Flowers as far as just electricity, wanting more explosive plays. Like, I think we would both lean in that
Yeah,
direction.
just the fit in the offense. It just feels like Zay Flowers is the guy that can create more, and that's kind of
Well,
the skill
sure.
set of more of what you're looking for. A guy that you feel comfortable that can create in those short area quickness situations, and a guy that can stretch the field with long speed. We haven't seen or read about the 40 time, but we expect it to be in the 4.3s, and then we'll get more information about that soon. But yeah,
Yeah.
he's got the speed for sure. We just got to put it on tape to be able to see what it is.
Yeah, and quick. I mean, it would not surprise me if he runs a faster 40 time than Zay Flowers, even at that size.
Yeah.
And Zay Flowers is just a different kind of athlete,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Just totally different skill set. But
Quickness.
the next guy we're going to talk about is fun for his own reasons. If you want to talk about just, hey, somewhere the Chargers have really been deficient, size, physicality, blocking at the tight end position, we can check all those boxes for you because we got to talk about tight end from Georgia, Darnell Washington, who is, people say, an athletic specimen, all the time. It gets thrown out there. This dude is a freakish size, and especially moves well for that size. And we're going to talk about that coming up after this. All right, the last of our mock draft Monday draft prospects for the Chargers, potentially in the first round. And this guy we're talking about, I don't think either one of us would take him in the first round. That's not the type of kind of tight end he is. But when you're looking at someone that's 6'7", 270, and I watched Hurdle a dude, there's going to be some potential interest there at the back of the first. So why does it make sense for the Chargers? Darnell Washington, obviously championship experience, back-to-back is not an easy thing to do. And he just did it at
And
Georgia.
the Chargers and Brandon Staley love their SEC Georgia Bulldogs.
They just hired another one. I mean, they just hired, one of their assistants, one of their, consultants is another Georgia guy they just brought in this year. So yes, they love Georgia.
Yes.
They've actually already taken a tight end from Georgia, Trey McKitty, right? And
Yeah.
don't hold that against Darnell Washington either. But I think a general need to be more physical, and realistically, a long-term answer at tight end would be all reasons, why the Chargers could potentially take a tight end early in this draft. And I think one reason, some of the reasons why teams or people could potentially link Darnell Washington to the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, the dude's gigantic. I mean, he's, like you said, 6'7", 270 pounds, and a guy who can really impose his will. When he is blocking, it seems like he just dominates defensive ends. It's one thing to block a guy. It's another thing to block him into the ground and finish those blocks. That's why this guy is being linked to the Chargers, because of that just pure ability to dominate your opponent.
Yeah, talk about something the Chargers just don't have, right? The Chargers don't have a dominant blocking tight end. Is a dominant blocking tight end worth a first-round pick? No, probably not. As far as like just being one-dimensional in that facet, and he's not totally one-dimensional. I think there's a reason to think he can improve a lot as a receiver. But when you're talking about just what his bread and butter is, I mean, he's pancaking a lot more than other dudes you're seeing at tight end, and it was quite refreshing to watch someone not be able to just and yeah, he's getting tasked with blocking a lot of defensive ends and things like that. But if you're talking about swallowing up people, that's what he does to a lot of defensive backs, right? Like if he gets hold of you as a defensive back, you're just toast.
Yeah.
And not only is he going to get in your way, right, but he's going to physically move you and maybe even put you into the dirt.
Exactly.
And he's athletic enough to hit those landmarks in space. And landmarks basically is like when someone's running a running play or something like that, and you're a blocker for it, you're trying to get to a certain part of the field by a certain time. He hits those marks, and he connects very, very often in space, which is really, really impressive. And something, you see a lot of offensive linemen and even some other tight ends struggle with. Out of the tight ends we've watched, obviously, we talked about the better receiving options last week or a couple weeks ago with Michael Mayer. We also talked about Dalton Kincaid, who we both really, really loved, right? Totally different prospect we're talking about here today, because gigantic dude who actually sticks with his blocks as well, which is nice. But one of Georgia's favorite plays was just to run, wide receiver screens and things like that, just following this dude.
Yeah,
and
behind him.
And it worked.
Yes.
And it worked. I mean, the Chargers, it's never always so frustrating to see the Chargers trying to run wide receiver screens. First of all, when you don't like the thought of, Zay Flowers running behind Darnell Washington on a wide receiver screen, I might become a wide receiver screen fan, right? Like I might change my philosophy on that and my viewpoint on that altogether, because that's what this dude is good at doing. And I think he brings yak in a very unconventional way. I think he brings yak just by sheer size and athleticism. He's a plotter, right?
Yeah.
He's not a quick guy by any means, but once he gets going, this is an extremely tough dude to bring down as well.
Yeah, I mean, we both were watching the film on him and saw him absolutely hurdle a dude, which
He did.
at 6'7", 270 pounds, that is not
Should
a
not be
bag
possible.
of
Yeah.
trick. That's not a trick from your bag that we expect to see out there on the football field. And of course, that's something you just feel in the moment. But he obviously felt like he was able to do it, and he pulled it off, and he gained probably an extra 8 to 10 yards
Yeah.
because
And
of
he had
that
already
hurdle.
broken a tackle on that play too. Broke a
Yep.
tackle and then went and hurdled the dude. If you're a defensive back, what are you going to do? You have to go low. Like,
Yeah, I was like,
you're going to
that
hit
was
him
the
in the
problem.
chest.
The corner tried to tackle him up high above the waist. And that's never going to happen for this guy
And then the
going
next
up.
guy goes low and he gets hurdled. You can't win.
Exactly. So, and the unfortunate thing is we just didn't see that very often, and I think that's part of the detractors when you're talking about Darnell Washington is you just don't have a lot of high end production in any of the 3 years that he was at Georgia. 7 receptions, 10 receptions, 28 receptions. Obviously, in those type of programs where there's a lot of NFL talent and a lot of mouths to feed, production is something that
Well, he's
doesn't
probably the
always
second
tell.
best tight end on his own team, right? I mean,
Right.
that plays a big factor when you have someone like Brock Bowers, who would probably be a first round pick drafted higher than Darnell Washington if he came out this year.
Yeah,
Gonna, impact some of that production for sure. But I mean,
definitely.
450 yards is not anything to sneeze at for college tight ends. I think
Sure.
just the, never having had more than 28 catches, and only going over even 200 receiving yards once in his college career. I mean, that's not screaming, receiving production for sure. To your point.
No. Yeah, not a polished route runner. I mean, like you said, he's a plotter. He's the guy that kind of seems like he's laboring a little bit. Not the best route runner, not the fastest guy in the field. Um, which, is the reason why I bring up the speed there is because he has trouble separating. And I think that's
Yeah.
one of the things that is definitely a concern for me. I like what he brings to the table. I love the ferocity, the physicality from a blocking standpoint. I can see some applications in the receiving game, but overall, Daniel, I don't see a first round pick when I look at Darnell Washington.
I would agree. I mean, I think Georgia left some things to be desired as far as the way they use them. Because, I mean, the dude
Yes.
averaged 17 yards a catch, right? Like,
Yeah.
when they got the ball in his hands, and I think his hands are probably average for a tight
Yeah.
end and nothing special there.
Right.
A couple of kind of, questionable catches where, bobbling and things like that, where it's not just, soft hands, I wouldn't say. But when he had the ball, he got 17 yards a catch. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like he broke tackles when he had the ball in his hands, but 45 catches in 36 career games, 3 career touchdowns, only one season of going, over 166 receiving yards. Just it doesn't feel like the production's there to warrant a first round pick at this point. Someone that I would be very, very excited, but it's just one of those things where everyone has a value. It's just where are you
Yeah.
willing to send that pick? And I
That's
wanted to
right.
talk about him because he's so polar opposite of the guys we've watched so far.
Yeah.
Not pulling the trigger at 21, but like later in the draft, like this is something the Chargers definitely need.
Oh, if he's there in the second round, Daniel, I am all over it. I would feel much more comfortable there in the second round because then I can be sold on the run blocking ability, especially when you consider the Kellen Moore offense stands to probably
And the
feature the
importance
tight
of the
ends a
tight
little bit
ends.
more
Yeah.
often, especially in the running game. You want a guy that's going to be able to really knock people out of the way, and especially if he's doing that, like you said, for Zay Flowers. If they take him in the first round, that would be a match made in heaven. That would be a perfect situation, and it would help Austin Eckler out a whole lot, Josh Kelly out a whole lot. You're going to get a lot more production out of your running backs because you got a guy who is a mobile offensive lineman blocking and getting out there in front for you.
Yeah, and it's funny because it feels like we hit every end of the spectrum as far as tight ends go, at least with the first 3 guys we watched, because it's like elite electric receiving option in Dalton
Yes.
Kincaid.
Yes.
Michael Mayer, who's probably not really special at any one thing except for looking like a movie star,
Yeah.
but also not a lot of weaknesses there either,
Yeah. Real
right?
solid.
Like
Yeah.
really solid at everything. And then you have someone like Darnell Washington, who, very, very, very good blocker, and someone that, has left a lot to be desired as a receiver and is not going to be a dominant receiving option. I think, you can definitely see the Mercedes Lewis, comparisons just because who else are you going to compare a 6'7", 270-pound dude to? But
Yeah.
Mercedes Lewis carved out a great career for himself, right? And used to be a little more explosive than he is these days, but was a legitimate receiving threat at one point. Came out more polished. But yeah, it's just where would you be willing to take him? Because obviously, if you're just looking at what the Chargers need, yeah, they need what he brings to the table. Probably other things they need more, but very exciting prospect in his own right. And I think we're getting a better picture of, some of the guys who could be available to the Chargers at 21. And coming up soon, we will be getting into, second round options for them and more stuff like that, and get into more traditional mock drafts as well on these Mondays. But make sure you guys are back here for tomorrow's show, where we talk about what some of last year's draft picks and some of the Chargers young players that could potentially take a leap this year and potentially change the way we kind of feel about the position groups. Guys like Isaiah Spiller, guys like JT Woods. Can JT Woods learn how to tackle? Because that would change a lot of things, right? As far as how we feel about who's lining up next to Derwin James potentially. So much could happen from this year to next year, and guys make second year leaps all the time. We're going to be talking about some of those guys tomorrow. But until then, make sure you guys are following the show wherever you get your podcast from. You can find us anywhere, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever, or subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel so you never miss out. Or you can find the show every day on all of our social media. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports, David Drogemeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD, and the show's page at Locked On LAC. You can also find our Locked On Chargers Facebook page and at Locked On Chargers on Instagram. Thank you guys again for making us your first listen today. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NFL Draft, because they're doing great stuff over there. Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez are providing in-depth coverage of the biggest NFL draft prospects. Something we've been listening to a lot. It's great to have those guys as part of the network. Can't wait to get them on the show and have them talk about some potential Chargers prospects as well. Something we'll definitely do. And maybe some draft conferences or some draft combine press conferences from Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley later on in the week. But that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow. As always, until then, take it easy and go Bolts.